Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Elliot Grigg, which means we are indeed in preview mode. We're at the O2 Arena in London this weekend for a massive heavyweight fight, a juggernaut fight, some would say, between the juggernaut himself, Joyce, and Derek Del Boy Chisora. Mate, when this fight got announced, I think it kind of came out of the blue, and we're all like, this is, it makes sense, but not necessarily wanting to see it. Joyce obviously coming off the back of those two Zhang back-to-back knockouts. He came back and beat Cash Ali. Derek Chisora actually won his last fight against Gerald Washington on the AJ Hellenius undercard. But has lost 4 of his last 6. And we're going full McKendry, mate. We say it sometime and again. My first question for you about this fight is: whoever loses this fight, is it quite simply the end of the road? Is retirement beckoning for the loser here?
You know what? I think, first off, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. I think, yes, I think whoever loses should definitely retire. And to be honest with you, it's not even just about whoever loses. If Chisora wins this fight, I think he should also retire. Frankly, I really do. I think, will he retire? No, I don't expect him to retire. But I think, honestly, I've seen enough sort of signs in Chisora recently that are actually quite alarming from a kind of just a medical perspective, and also just there's a lot of fights, 34 wins, like you say, 13 losses, but a lot of losses recently. I think it really is time for him to retire. The fact that he's even in this fight for me is surprising. Joyce, slightly different to me, obviously not had the same number of fights, not had the same sort of mileage, but I think if he loses to this version of Chisora, it'd be hard to see any point. I mean, he probably will continue as well, but it'd be hard to see a point to it. I don't think he'll necessarily be able to ascend to any sort of the level that he wants to, or even the level that he frankly was at before the sort of what has to be described, frankly, as brave but very poor matchmaking against Zhang. So for me, I think if he loses, retire. But I'd like to see Chisora retire anyway, no matter what happens in this fight. And you talked about there's not a lot of common sense going to this. There's not a lot. I don't even know if there's any dollars or cents going into this. Really, Paul. Frankly, it just seems a bizarre occasion. Will I watch it? Yes. It'd be a morbid curiosity, but it's not one of those fights that sits a bit uncomfortably at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what you've said. It does. I mean, I'll be watching, but it's kind of one of them where will you be watching? Will you be watching with squinting eyes? Kind of, oh, don't really want to see this. Depending on what way it goes, I think. Um, to answer my question, I kind of do agree with what you're saying. Without sounding like we don't like the retire fighters, but I think a lot of boxing fans would agree with us in saying that I think Chisora should have already retired. He clearly loves fighting and loves earning money, so fair play to him. Yeah, but I do agree with you. I think there's some kind of signs there that maybe shouldn't still be taking punishment in the ring. That being said, Joyce, those back-to-back defeats to Zhang. Obviously, the first one was that he was the big favorite. Second time around, he got ironed out in 2 rounds, and that was an alarming knockout. Then he looked really poor and cumbersome, more cumbersome than he already is, I think, against Cash Ali in his comeback. Only stopped him right at the end of the fight, which, with all due respect to Cash Ali, wasn't great. I think loser here, loser here has to retire. And I mean, I kind of agree with what you said. Depending on how it goes, maybe the winner could even retire here as well. You never know, honestly. With that being said, mate, I think Joyce is obviously the favorite for this fight. I think a lot of people are expecting him to win this one. So, say he does, is there any world in which you can see him then going on to challenge for world honors, maybe even winning a world heavyweight title, which a lot of people were touting him to do before the Zhang defeats?
Right, let's get this straight first and foremost. Do I see him winning a world title? No. Do I see him fighting for a world title? Now, I'm going to say no, but I'm also going to contradict myself. So I think no, if you're talking at it from a kind of merit perspective. Like, does he deserve to fight for a world title over other names such as, like you say, Zhang, Kabayel even? Guys that may be coming through as well. Does he just Parker? Parker probably deserves to fight for a world title again before Joyce. Does he deserve to fight ahead of any of those guys? No. He's 38 years old now. So if you think the belts are going to be tied up, you've got Dubois obviously fighting AJ. AJ, I'm expecting to come through that and be world champion. But even if he doesn't, you've obviously got a new world title, a new world champion there. Do I see Joyce being in a position by the time he's 40 to fight for it? Maybe not. Well, I think, you look at this, the wins over Cash Ali and Derek Chisora shouldn't shoot on you into fighting for a world title. So for me, the answer is no. But the reason why I've contradicted myself is because I can actually see an instance where an AJ or even a Dubois, if Dubois does beat AJ, chooses to fight Joe Joyce, frankly, off the back of a kind of British fight with some hype behind it. I think you could make a case for Dubois fighting Joyce in a rematch, making that for a world title possibly. I think, like you said as well, people were actually backing Joyce to beat AJ before what happened to Zhang. People were heavily thinking he'd have too much for AJ. I thankfully never went that far. I do think AJ would batter him in this guy's and also definitely the previous guys, but definitely this guy's as well. I think the hand speed would be too much. He'd catch him and stop him. But I can also see possibly AJ having a voluntary against Joyce. Can maybe see that happening if there's enough money behind it. I really can. If he's waiting, depending on what's happening with Usyk, depending on what's happening with Fury as well. I don't think necessarily AJ wants to fight. I think he'd rather fight Fury, frankly. But I think if it comes along, he wants to stay busy. I don't think it's a difficult fight for him. So I can see it happening. But I don't think it would happen on merit, put it that way. So it shouldn't happen. But equally, it might happen, given the sort of narratives at play. What about yourself? Do you see him? I mean, surely you're in agreement. Surely we're not seeing him win a world title. But are you in agreement that he might fight for one? Where are you thinking he might fight for it? He might not fight for it. Where are you with it?
Yeah, I love your optimism that he probably could, and it makes complete sense what you're saying, but I just don't see him fighting for a world title. Again, I think we've seen the best of Joyce. I think, yeah, like he kind of came through, turned over late from the Olympics, kind of got fast tracked to, winning the Commonwealth, British, European, all that there up to, world level against Zhang. Getting not found out, I suppose, because Zhang's a really good fighter, as we know, but yeah, I mean, he had some good wins along the way, but I just don't see him becoming world champion. Definitely not, and fighting for one. I'm reluctant to say yes, but I mean, as I said, nothing would really surprise me. As I said, maybe a voluntary. Like, say for example, Dubois beat AJ. Does he go? Oh, one of the defeats on my record is the Joe Joyce. I want to avenge that loss. I'll defend my IBF title voluntarily against Joyce. Wouldn't couldn't maybe Joseph Parker say one more of the belts become fragmented for the Fury and Usyk rematch, and Joseph Parker picks one of them up. Joyce beat Parker, which is a really good win now when you look at what Parker's done since. And Joseph Parker, like, nah, come on, I'm avenging that loss against Joe Joyce and maybe defending a world title against him voluntarily if he was to win it. I could see that happening, but I mean, that's a lot of if, buts, and maybes. We like to stick to absolutes, and I do not see Joe Joyce. Absolutely, do not see Joe Joyce becoming world champion. Unfortunately, and yeah, I don't. I'll maybe go as far as saying I don't think he will fight for one either. Prediction time, mate. How does Joyce Chisora go on Saturday, July 27th at the O2 Arena?
You know what, Paul? I think it's such a hard one because Chisora is obviously slowed down significantly. I still expect Chisora to plod forward, frankly, and throw that massive overhand right, and whether it lands on Joyce or not is going to be where the intrigue for me for this fight is, because Joyce obviously doesn't move. We've seen that in the Zhang fight, so he could actually land on Joyce. 23 KOs in 34 fights. He could beat Joe Joyce. He really could. Joe Joyce, I look at this and go, slow. Could he just jab Chisora into like a stoppage, or could he just essentially just fatigue Chisora to the point where he's so tired they'll just win maybe on points or maybe the late stoppage? I can see that as well. So it's a really, really, really hard one. It's 12 rounds as well, which is a long way for Derek to go. I'm going to lean slightly towards Joe Joyce. Frankly, I think. I mean, it could be a late stoppage. I think it could be a late stoppage. I really do. I think it's just on Chisora fatiguing out, but equally, I could also see one where we just get treated to 12 rounds of horrible viewing and the Joyce wins the decision. I'm going to lean towards Joe Joyce. Paul, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, all of the common sense would tell you to back Joe Joyce here definitely as well. Just kind of, even though he has looked shot of late, but man, you know what? I'm not saying this with any confidence, right? And I'll probably take a lot of stick for this in the comments. I'm backing Chisora to win this fight.
God, oh God, son.
Honestly, it sounds ridiculous saying that. Honestly, I cannot believe
Kelly, more Chisora.
But I mean, I think they're both way past their best. But we've seen both obviously stop numerous times. Think, yes, you said Chisora's gas tank or whatever, but like he will just come forward, plod forward, and throw big, heavy leather. And Joe Joyce doesn't move his head. We know that. He doesn't get out of the way of punches. He uses his face as a guard half the time, right? And I have question marks as to whether his chin is completely gone after that Zhang one. But, he used to be this, kind of like it was like hitting a wall when you hit his face. But has Zhang just turned that chin into glass? I'm gonna say has, and I think Chisora will stop Joe Joyce. Which is it's a bit mad. I think either way, it's going stoppage. Definitely, I think this is fight's going to be stoppage one way or another. But as
Let
crazy as
me
it
put a
sounds, mate, I
personal
know.
appeal out now to one of our friend of the show, that is Gary Graham, who has called. We've had a lot of predictions that have come in, Paul. One of it, we've gone different ways now. I want to hear from Gary. Who's he siding with? Because I got it wrong, obviously, in McCaskill Price. You got it right. And I want to know who he's going with. We'll leave the deciding vote to him, Paul, if we before wrap up. But that is what I want to know, because we've got unbelievable. We didn't know about this beforehand. We did not know there'd be variants coming into this fight, and I'm delighted there is. So we can put that out there to the viewers of the show.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. And we're in disagreement, but yeah, guys, let us know your thoughts on this fight. Who wins this? How are you excited for the fight, or do you really not want to see it? But yeah, let us know your thoughts on the fight, guys. As always, like, share, subscribe to the channel if you don't do so already. Plenty of content coming your way. And whether it's reviews, previews, big fight breakdowns, interviews with fighters, and so on and so forth, we've got you covered with all sorts of content. Guys, thanks very much for watching. Elliot, thanks very much for joining me, and speak to you again soon.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul. As always, guys, thank you very much for watching.